All right. Good morning, gentlemen. Your favorite host, Bob, back with the BTC Breakdown. Getting right down to it. Let's see where the gains are today. Obviously, if you remember what this chart looked like yesterday, as this candle was entirely red and was engulfing this one, and it was actually slightly below here. And I said, it looks like Bitcoin trying to make a liar out of me. And then, as the day progressed, and it didn't take long after the video for that matter, but this entire wick was basically filled in at one point yesterday. I think it popped up to about here-ish. So it's doing exactly what we talked about right now, right? Like that it's going to be a volatile week for sure, but that ideally, again, this level continues to hold. I don't care if it wicks below it. I don't even care if it wicks down to here. I just want to see this level continue to hold and any wicks get bought up and then just continue to push up through the week. And again, the way I see it, I mean, this is just what's going to happen. I don't look at this and think to myself that this thing's going to roll over and that it's coming down from here. No, I mean, in my mind, I see it playing out exactly the way we've talked about. Parabolic fall, parabolic recovery, and the initial recovery. The problem is that this is a weekly chart, right? We're talking about something that if this was on, and I could show you on shorter time frames how it looks when it's playing out on shorter time frames, and we wouldn't have to wait days and days and a week to see it happen. But that's this is, again, this thing should recover right back up. It may pop, it's, again, like I talked about, it's going to be either like a multi-week thing where it just kind of presses up through there, or this week could be the big one that really breaks out of here, and then it's actually going to spend the next several weeks actually retracing back through there, because typically that first pop is the highest one, and that's kind of a thing that sometimes you got to remind yourself as you're watching these charts that especially after an impulse move to the upside or downside for that matter, the first move that comes, assuming that is the first move, it's typically the biggest one. And then, so like, let's just say for a second that we get this impulse move up to here, like we've been talking about. Well, then it probably does spend some time coming back down to here before making another move up. Now, it depends on the pattern, obviously, because here the first impulse move was to there. Second impulse move took it to here. So this was a higher high. But when the market's bullish and you start getting impulse moves and then corrective moves, the corrective moves tend to be like flagging patterns. So in those scenarios, then the first move is the biggest one, and then you spend some time just kind of bouncing before you make another impulse move to the upside. So again, I still, at least for now, hold to the idea that this thing is going to play out the way that I've been talking about, that we will break through this yellow line right here, even though you can see that it is, in fact, holding up pretty well right now. But I hold to the idea that we will break through that line. I just don't know if it would be this week or next week. I do think it will be this week, and I think that that's the most realistic scenario. I think, honestly, if it took until next week to break up out of this yellow line, I honestly don't know if it happens, and then I would be much more inclined to think we just roll over. But let's zoom in on the daily here, and you can see again. I mean, I think that the fact that this line from the downtrend coming back to the 69K all-time high, I mean, you can see here. I mean, it is absolutely being respected through here. Which tells me that, in fact, this entire move here was a bullish fake out, and that, in fact, this is the true trend line for the pattern, which means that, which tells me that at least we are looking at this correctly, that we are, in fact, in a falling wedge, at least within a falling channel to a large extent. Because again, we zoom out here, and again, you can see the larger potential falling channel, getting this bullish fake out of the way, but still bringing everything else into the equation. Our center line is essentially the bottom of our falling wedge, and there's the top of it. So again, I mean, at least as of now, everything seems to be going accordingly. Now, again, here's at the end of the day where our problem is going to come in, and I think this is the biggest issue. Is that, again, you know, I mean, this little setup right here. There's nothing bullish about this, right? Like I know I keep sitting here talking about how it's going to pop, but I mean, unless this is truly a bit of a rounded bottom, then in reality, all we're still looking at here is some sideways ranging, failure to put in higher highs, which again says, hey, we got to put in a lower low. The thing that I think maybe is a saving grace is that, like I said, you know, and if you remember this yesterday, I was talking about the RSI here yesterday, and just saying how, you know, we just kept going through the same thing, and this whole time as we've been in this kind of bearish funk, it's been the same thing repeatedly. You get a bearish divergence followed by a bullish divergence. Well, I did not expect what we got yesterday, honestly. I knew we'd get a bullish divergence, but if you remember yesterday when I was doing this video, the price action was way down here, right? Like down in the depths of this red wick right here, and it was just struggling. All of a sudden, as soon as it found support, boom, and it just spent the entire rest of the day just cooking, for the most part. And then, so the same thing happened. I mean, here was the bearish divergence. This right here, where this closed out the day right here, it was way down here like this one was this morning, right? So what I'm expecting is that if the 21 simple does not hold up here, so this white line, if this does not hold up as support right now, then we'll come back down here, and we're going to get the same thing we got yesterday, that this thing's going to get to a point where it falls into a spot, and it gets a bullish divergence, because again, the price will be so much lower here than it was here, right? I mean, it's already pretty darn close to falling below that, or even here, right? Like it's already fairly close, and yet the RSI is higher. So if the price pulls down into here, good chance again we see another bullish divergence. Now the thing will be, and what I was concerned about yesterday was that the bullish divergence would just come up here and get stopped out at the 21, and then get rejected. And then today we'd be spending the day trying to in this candle, that this one would actually be down here, starting out going upwards and then getting rejected here. But right now the 21 is acting as support. So this is, you know, in terms of what we want to see, I mean, it's as good as it could be for the moment. Probably going to make some adjustments on some trend lines here. I got some trend lines I need to update, but here's what I was, and here was my concern part that I was talking about earlier, and just kind of explaining, reiterate. This is a bearish pattern. Okay, now this pattern right here, again, it could be a rounded bottom. Definitely doesn't look like a rounding top anymore, and you can see that the parabola has, you know, if I would have kept a parabola here, a downside parabola, you can see that obviously it's no longer following that. So I'm not too concerned about that. The concern I have is not the pattern on the price action, but the pattern on the RSI is a rising, broadening wedge, and I think I've talked about it. I mean, these things do break out to the upside. It's not impossible. In fact, it happens fairly frequently, I'd say. But they, you know, when they break out to the upside, then it tends to be a real nasty pullback to the downside when it does happen. But the key here is that it is, in fact, holding this trend line for now. So if the bulls go ahead and hold this level and make us a nice push, who knows? I mean, maybe you could actually watch this thing do just what it did yesterday, fire right on up here to this 33,000 range, and all of a sudden we're wondering where the hell's Bitcoin been, right? And, you know, it'd be nice to see something like that. Little double top here with bearish divergence, which is already playing out. I don't know. It kind of looks like, to an extent, this section of price action here is kind of forming what would appear to be a descending triangle. The only question is, so descending triangles, the thing about them is that they're continuation patterns. So what you would, so let's say that we had let's say this was truly a descending triangle. Then as Bitcoin gets squeezed by this line and this support here, eventually it will be forced to move down. The thing is, I don't know if the pattern was truly established, assuming it is a descending triangle. I don't know that the pattern was necessarily created based out of the downside move here, but potentially the upside move that came prior. If that's the case, then this is just a consolidation right here, that essentially Bitcoin will continue to hold this level. It's going to consolidate within this range before breaking out to the upside over here. And maybe that puts us into next week a little bit there. So we'll see. Again, it all stems from holding this level. Ideally, we'll just, like I said, we'll get something like yesterday where it just blows up out of there. But if it doesn't, again, we just want to see it be sitting on top of that white line by the end of the day. So if we close out the day, somewhere in the 30,000 range, like right at just above 30,000, let's say, then I would feel pretty good about that, again, being a supportive move. And then tomorrow we would see another green day and potentially, just get stuffed by this line again. But again, that's what we're going to be looking for at this stage. But yeah, this little double top here isn't beautiful. It's not really something I would want to see if I'm looking for bullish moves. And then again, this rising, broadening kind of wedge looking pattern here, again, not really what I'd want to see. But I think I could also potentially make an argument that with the way that this is shaping up, I mean, this thing could actually just be following right along this little, I could actually make the argument that we got a little parabola that would start here. At least potentially. I mean, you got several touches on that already. Bitcoin loves to do this little parabola thing. I mean, I could show you again multiple time frames and all that good stuff where it happens. Even yesterday, I mean, interesting thing about the parabolas recently, at least the upside ones, is that they haven't been like filling in entirely. Normally what I'd look for on an upside parabola, let's say that this is a valid trend line, I would expect the price action to literally stay within this all the way through the pattern, right? Like that it would just it would kind of make progress, kind of make its way up. Maybe I'll show you guys how this would work here. Let's see. Where are you? Uh-oh. All right, there we go. Found what I was looking for. All right, so then, typically you'd actually see these things kind of play out exactly like they would just follow trend lines to perfection. So like you'd get this kind of move like this, and then eventually this would be the breakout. Well, what's happening instead is, at least over the last few days when I've seen them, is that they're kind of doing just like it did here, except it's breaking out a little bit sooner than I would expect it to, and that's exactly what happened yesterday morning. I mean, I'm sitting there looking at it. I'm like, all right, that's parabola. I got a little time before we'd want to jump into a position there, and then all of a sudden this thing just starts cranking on up. And I'll happily show you that. I mean, you can see so here it is right here. Yeah, I still got it on the chart. So parabola right here, boom. The moment it hit right here, it just took right off. But again, in general, what you would have expected is that it would have worked its way through all of this stuff for a little bit longer. So again, I guess we could look at this and say that it's really the volatility. Well, and then also too, you really only had, it was a kind of a double bottom kind of a situation, whereas I might have expected at least a third move to the downside. It was just the price action's been kind of just doing its own thing here, and I assume I can blame that on the volatility of the bear market structure and everything. again, this is kind of uncharted territory as far as it goes. I mean, my time in crypto has been spent in the bull market for the most part until the last year and change. So like, well, and then the bear market structure before is very different than it is right now. So like this level of volatility, even say from I don't know last April until last December, like I didn't see this type of stuff happening where you got these just ridiculous parabolic moves and then just parabolic drops that, and these things will happen within a couple of hours, typically. I mean, look at this is hourly chart. What is this? 2 hours to wipe out, 3.73%, and then another 2. So basically 2 hours to wipe out about 5% on Bitcoin, 6%. And then it only took about 6 hours to put that same percentage back in. So, again, things have been happening pretty quickly when they are happening, and then just a bunch of sideways, make you fall asleep garbage in the interim. Either way, that's like I said, that's kind of what threw me off, at least for sure, yesterday a little bit, was that I would have certainly expected this rejection here at this line, or a retest of this, and then a pop out of there. Instead, pop, and then retest here. Anyway, so today, I think today, as far as what I'm looking for, and again, going back to a wider view here again, hopefully this level holds. If it doesn't, again, I think that you can see here, lower low, lower low, lower low, just wicks. The actual candles closed up, but if this thing wicks down, I'm going to say that it probably exceeds this wick, and maybe comes down to here, potentially at least. So maybe this would be my downside target for today, and then if things just really come off the rails, and again, this is a bearish pattern, so I'm definitely saying that it's feasible it could, but total downside target, at least for today, I would not expect it to exceed kind of this 27.6 level here. I don't expect it to get there, but I would say that would be the furthest downside target I would look for today. Upside target, I'd be looking up here. Do I think that it's going to happen? Probably not. It doesn't look to me like it would. And I say that just because of the number of touches we've put on this trend line. I feel as though, generally speaking, you get 3 touches on a line. Maybe the 4th one is the breakout, right? Now, granted, in a downtrend, it's been a lot more than 3 touches, but like in general, on shorter time frames, 3 touches, and then the 4th is a breakout. We've essentially got 1-2 touches here. So I don't necessarily anticipate that this thing is going to reverse course and pop up to here today. But again, if we do come down into here and then manage to wick, put in a big downside wick, come back up here, close the day out here, I'd feel pretty decent about the idea that the next day will come up and at least put in another touch up here. So, again, upside at this point, I mean, we may have already seen the upside for the day. I mean, this, 31.4-ish level. And then again, hopefully downside target does not actually reach this level. But, again, that's the one that we've got to be cognizant of. And then this potentially being the way downside target, at least today. Again, none of those things should happen, but I think that it would probably be a reasonable thing for us to see what's going on with the S&P real quick before we wrap this thing up for the day. So the S&P was interesting yesterday, and I think I'd said, I think I talked about it that we were opening right into resistance. But then we come down here, once again, this level held up. And I'm almost kind of blown away by it, to be honest, because the traditional markets tend to follow technical analysis even more closely than cryptos do. I mean, the crypto market is so heavily manipulated that you don't always follow the patterns, simply because if it always followed the patterns, like, then traders would just be out here, nobody would ever work again, right? Like, people could just go ahead and trade patterns and know it's going to happen this exact way, every time, right? So you know, so it surprised me a little bit that this thing actually did get bought up again here, but the same problem still persists in that until or unless it breaks above and holds this level, and then at that point too, we not only needed to break and hold this level, we needed to then break out of this kind of ascending pattern that we've been in, or again, we just it's downside, and again, it's a bearish pattern, so it seems reasonable to believe that eventually it will break down. But the thing that has intrigued me a little bit here and really held my interest is the fact that the bulls are in fact defending at least on the hourly time frame, the bulls are totally defending this thing right now, right? Like if it falls below this level, then you can assume that the bears are starting to take back a little bit of control. But right now the bulls are fighting. So I guess that, at the end of the day, the question just becomes, will they be able to continue the fight? And do we have something that it can actually break out of some sort of pattern? Well, let's make a little adjustment here. Assume that we've got 3 points right there. Well, all of a sudden, this one is actually already looking like a breakout. So yeah, I mean, assuming that the S&P and Bitcoin still maintain some correlation, and let's see what the implied open is today. We're going to come back to just below this resistance to open the day. So basically like right at the blue line as opposed to the fib level there. But we're basically right there. So we're opening right into resistance again today. Do the bulls manage to defend this again? I think that at least I've got to consider the idea that they will. The only thing I guess that I'm looking at now that I'm actually sitting here talking about this would actually be a fairly reasonable, if you wanted to look at this doesn't look like a descending triangle, don't get me wrong, it looks nothing like one on the price action, but this actually forms into a pretty decent descending triangle. Look here, you got a lower level here, you had a move that was downward that came into it, and then you've since been consolidating within there. So this actually has the feasibility to be a descending triangle, and if it is breaking out, this may end up being a fake out. And you can see here, Bitcoin, I'm getting a positive divergence there. That means Bitcoin is currently moving to the downside at the moment. So we'll see what's going on there. But again, assuming that this is in fact intended to be a descending triangle, this thing is going to roll on over, and maybe this thing actually does come down in through here. We'll see. We shall see. But otherwise, look for a retest on this line right here, and then more upside to ensue. So maybe instead of coming way back down to here again, maybe we might actually just find support right here at this 41.25 level. If we find support there and this thing, starts turning green again, I may say it's game on, because at that point I would be far less inclined to believe that we've got to come back down into here. But again, we shall see. We shall see. There's, nothing's ever a given. Nothing's ever a given. And let's go ahead and zoom out here. Daily. Yeah, we've talked about the daily chart on this one before. I said exactly what would happen here. We'd get rejection and or bearish divergence, which we got. Red day, back to green. We might be able to put in another green day, right? I mean, ignore the orange line for now since this is the daily chart. This thing could actually come right on up here. Now at that point, I would say this: if it comes up here and puts in another bearish retest on this line, at that point, I would say fairly safely this thing will go ahead and just cascade down. So again, if anything's going to happen today, that would be to the positive side. We've got to come up, maybe not even just get rejected at this. We'd want to see it push up through it all the way up to the 80 and then find support here or come back down to retest here at that point. If we can get that move, then I will start to feel a little bit better about where this thing is and where it's going. So again, if we can get a move up into the 40, above 4160, start pushing 4200, whatever, and then tomorrow, maybe come back down, retest here versus just rejected and then continuing to retest this range. The interesting thing is here, looking at this, you can see where the 21 simple on the daily chart is. It's kind of coming up under and trying to give support to the price action, with all these other moving averages moving down. So these are all going to act as resistance. So I can tell you, at least in the immediate term, I mean, there's zero chance that the S&P gets above 43.15 in the short term. I mean, it's and who knows whether I'm saying that's a couple of days, a week or two, whatever. But like, there's practically a 0% chance it gets above here in the immediate future. So, there's some interesting stuff going on here. I don't know if maybe this kind of starting to look a little bit like that. But, hey, either way, we've got an idea here of what we got coming. Hey, if we got some downside coming this morning, great. Let's get it out of the way, and let's pop up off the levels once again. Let's see the bulls go ahead and continue to defend. And, looking forward to really just kind of looking forward to seeing how it goes from here. As always, hey, we appreciate you. Keep an eye on everything just to see what's going to happen for us here, of course. And looking forward to some good news for everybody before you know it. Appreciate you. Talk soon.